Welcome back to FasTrax Cars. I'm Kevin Matlo, and I got Ryan here with a beautiful 1976 black Firebird. Ryan, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Tell me about your car.
It's my first car. I've had it since 96.
Really?
Yeah, so I actually grew up, my grandmother had a 76 Firebird, brand new when I was 1.
Yeah.
And actually just finally got rid of it a few years ago. And they lived in the country, so the salt and everything rusted it out.
Yeah.
And when I was a teenager, I dreamed of restoring it. And when I was in my early 20s and started to have some money, it was too far gone for what I could do at that time. And so I found this car. It had good paint on it, needed other restoration work, and I didn't really have anybody to teach me to do stuff, so I just got a Haynes repair manual.
Right, yep.
And did everything myself. First started with rebuilding the suspension the first winter, and I built a 455 that I raced with it, and
I think it's how we all started out.
Did a lot of racing with that, and and this car actually changed my life quite a bit because I was a very introverted person.
Yeah. And
like in high school, where like a loner, extremely introverted.
Yeah.
And when I built my 455 and started racing and cruising, started meeting all these different people and developed my confidence and became an extremely outgoing person. And now I do technical sales, and
good for you.
I've had a career in sales for over 20 years.
That's fantastic.
So just changed my identity.
It's amazing how a car can do that, isn't it?
It can do that.
That's fantastic.
Right.
Great story. I love that.
And in 2001, I did the body work and paint myself. So it's the first car that I've ever painted.
Right.
Taught myself to do that, rented a booth. And
that's tough.
Did that. And definitely learned, especially with black, how to correct any paint errors.
Yeah.
And then later years in 2007, I had health issues. And I had 2 years of operation after operation after operation.
Okay.
And realized life was kind of short.
Yeah.
So I decided to put the big money into it, and I worked with Butler Performance, designing the 535, like exactly what this engine combination would be, and worked with them designing it. Randy from that owned Pro Stock Performance in Edmonton. It's got a TCI 6X 6-speed transmission with paddle shifters and a lockup converter, so it goes down the highway, and I said 2,200 RPM. Despite the big motor, it gets 22 miles a gallon on the highway. But
that's incredible.
2 in the city.
The
camshaft and the head flow. It's not efficient for idling, but
no. But on the highway, you're doing well.
Yeah, on the highway, it's a good cruiser.
That's fantastic.
It's a heavy car because it's got a full interior, full exhaust. But I did the chassis work and like everything that you'll see on it. I did myself. So.
That's fantastic. And this is, now you said the paint. You did this paint yourself.
I did this, 2001. So it's showing some age and chips. I'll probably repaint it in a year or so.
Fantastic. That's great. Now, the engine itself you're talking about, let's go a little bit more in depth into what it was like replacing and swapping out this engine.
So Indian Adventures makes an aftermarket racing block. This was the first one in Alberta back in 2009, as far as I know.
Okay.
And...
and it fit in fine?
Yeah, it's a Pontiac platform, and Butler designed the Edelbrock heads for Edelbrock.
Yeah.
And they have an arrangement so they get raw castings from Edelbrock, and then they CNC port them with a really wide port. They move the push rod over 700 thou, so I have shaft rockers with offset arms for the intake, and it's a pretty exotic motor. It's also one of the first sequential fuel-injected Pontiacs in the world, and I had to wait over a year for McSell to develop their dual-sync distributor so that I could do that. I've now got a crank trigger on it. Okay. Just a little more accurate, but it works really well.
Fantastic. And obviously, you said the transmission you changed the paddle shifters.
Yeah, so I can
What's
run.
What's it like doing that with a car like this?
I can run it in different modes. So I can run it in automatic mode. I've got a switch on the dash, and I can run it in manual mode with the paddle shifters. Yeah. And a little fun to cruise around.
Absolutely.
If it's like, especially drag racing, if I want to manually control like shifting. Yeah. Or you just let the computer do what I've programmed.
Absolutely. Wonderful.
Really well.
And suspension-wise, what have you done to the car? It looks like you probably had to do a little bit of work to suspension.
So I did a ladder bar, rear suspension. I built some pretty big frame connectors that are actually through the floor from the back to connect the subframe to the front.
Right.
And then you're always doing things. So in the last year, I finally did some last things that were on my list for the last 14 years.
Yeah.
So I put tubular control arms in the front. So I had the coilover, QA1 coilovers already, but the factory control arms and things like the billet hood hinges and just a lot of little stuff. So
Absolutely. And the tire is quite wide rubber on this.
yeah, it's a 12-inch wide tread DOT slick.
Yeah.
I need more.
Is it a daily driver or is it just show car?
No, I cruise around a lot.
Really?
I've got 700, at least 700 miles on it so far this year.
Wow. Good for you.
So go to car meets on Fridays and Saturdays. And I've done quite a few shows this year.
Excellent. So you can still drive your car, not just have it a garage queen and show car. It's awesome.
It's an all-in-one. It's fairly decent show quality. Really good cruiser, but it's run at sea level on pump gas 972.
Okay.
They're really mad at me for that because I run a very low 10 here, but at sea level it's faster, and I don't have a roll cage through the dash because it's a cruiser.
Yeah.
And then on nitrous I ran an 873.
Wow.
They were very mad.
I bet. I bet.
Because I said, I'll just do some half-track tuning passes, and then I did a nitrous run later in the day, and they're pretty mad.
Absolutely.
So it's a fun cruiser.
That's fantastic. All right, so let's take a look at the interior now. What have you done to the interior? It looks like you got racing seats.
Yeah, those were just done 2 years ago. I had cheap racing buckets in for a long time because they were light and they're good for my back.
Right.
But they looked cheap and they weren't appropriate for a car built at this level. So these are from California, from Braun.
Right. They're 4-point or 5-point?
They're a 4-point.
4-point harness, yeah.
And I've got a 5-point harness, but the seat's 4-point, so it doesn't come
good.
through the
Okay,
seat.
got it. Yeah.
Mostly I've just kept the interior stock, like stock panels, rear seats.
Yeah.
The dash is just gauges, and it took about 2 years to find carbon fiber that matched the gauges from Autometer, so I could do my switch panel.
Right.
And,
excellent.
Just kind of keep it clean and simple.
Excellent. Not a factory steering wheel?
No, that's a factory steering wheel.
Is it? Okay. The aluminum. Yeah.
Yeah. Mine had actually cracked eventually, so it's a replacement reproduction.
Okay, yeah.
And then I've got the paddle shifters and then there's a display.
Yeah.
So I can set it to either show my gear, I can show speed in kilometers an hour if I want, or all kinds of different, throttle position or trans temperatures, all kinds of information on there.
Absolutely. That's fantastic. That's great.
So,
and the roll bar here,
and the roll bar, that's the only thing on this car I didn't do myself because I don't have a tube bender.
Okay.
So wheel alignment and the roll bar.
That's the only thing.
It's the only thing.
That's a lot. That's great. That's a huge amount of work you put into your own car. You always hear people saying, I built my car, but I had someone do paint, but I had someone do suspension, but I had someone. Yeah. So when somebody actually says I built my car and they built everything but two things, that's a personal build.
Right. Yeah.
Good for you.
I've got a passion and.
Absolutely. What have you done to the exhaust now? Because I know when I heard you pulling in, I could hear you coming.
Yeah, so it's a 3.5-inch exhaust, so it's a 2-inch header, a Pontiac motor with a 3.5-inch collector, 3.5 exhaust. I had to build my own X pipe because they didn't make a 3.5-inch at that time.
Right.
Aluminized steel. Mufflers, I wanted something as quiet as possible. I originally had 4 mufflers on it, single and then 2 chambers, and it was absurdly loud.
Yeah.
So I had Flowmaster, I think it's their 60 series, the 3-chamber. They don't make them in 3.5.
Oh,
I had to get them, pay a fair bit, but have them custom make the mufflers for me. And then I did the tailpipes, and I actually made like the Trans Am dual pipe that comes down and had the tips chromed.
Right.
And then
so they curve and tilt down.
They curve and tilt down and look a lot like the factory ones.
Fantastic.
Right. So.
That's great. That's great. Is there a cutoff switch in it as well, or is it straight out? Straight out.
Straight out. through the exhaust, it's not going to run really faster with a cutout.
No.
It doesn't need to be louder than what it is.
No, and like I said, I heard it coming in, so it's a beautiful sounding car. And it drives good, obviously, with the suspension work you've done and everything else, it drives good on the road. And
extremely
good, which is fantastic.
Still corners really well for a drag race, and ladder bar. It's amazing how well this corners.
I bet. Excellent. Well, let's just pop it and let's pop the hood and get a look at the engine here. So a little bit more than I expected. This is quite the engine here.
Thank you.
So tell me a little bit about the parts that went into this engine. I mean, everything's braided, everything's chrome, everything's.
Yeah.
What's going on here?
Yeah. Everything's. It was hard to get things that weren't blue anodized.
Yeah.
But in the late 2000s, some of the fittings and stuff, they started making them. The vacuum pump, that was a special request from Moroso to do a clear anodized, and then it became a standard part number. I guess he liked it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's the Indian Adventures IE2 Pontiac block 535. It's a 4.5-inch stroke.
Mm-hmm.
Made 830 horsepower, pump gas, naturally aspirated at 6,900 RPM. I shifted 72. I've tested it to 74.
Right.
I've got with Butler's CNC wide port heads on it. Intake was all CNC ported. I had extra platinum work that they CNC ported for it. I had to shave the intake 1/2 inch to get the throttle body low enough that I could fabricate a shaker base and still have a shaker on it.
Yeah.
And then the nitrous system is instead of a bar, like a plate. There's the spray bars that actually have mounted them through the intake and position the holes to line up with the runners. Multi-port fuel injection. Just turn a key. I don't have to get in the car. It never hiccups. It never backfires. Runs perfect when it's cold. It runs exactly like a new vehicle. Just very, very drivable.
That's absolutely incredible. It's the fact that you have this much power and this much technology put into a car like this and have it run as a daily. That's compliments to you for being able to engineer that and get that going.
Yeah, it took a fair bit of work, and there's lots of little things to hide, wiring and running transmission lines through the frame and all kinds of different stuff to just make it look clean. Cut out the firewall where the heater box was, welded in flat steel and smooth stuff out. And the only thing left that's bugging me is the red on the fuel regulator, but they now make a black one. So
yeah, I think it looks
but it kind of grabs some attention.
It does grab attention. Lately, I like it.
So I'm like, this summer I'm going to shows. It actually draws your attention a little bit. So
it does.
You keep it that way.
It's a showstopper. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for sharing your car with me. I really appreciate that.
Thank you. I appreciate being on your channel.
Thank you.